Hi, it's Charlton from the Del Sol Quartet, and this is an Angel Island bonus episode from the interview we recorded with stage director, artistic director, and educator Matthew Ozawa on the eve of our New York premiere of Angel Island at BAM, produced by Beth Morrison Productions. As we discussed throughout Season 1 of Sounds Current, each performance of Angel Island has been unique. And in this clip, Matthew and I are discussing how his first visit to Angel Island, personal family history, and vision for the future all inspired the New York staging. As of this recording, Matthew has some exciting productions on the horizon, including Puccini's Madama Butterfly with Pittsburgh Opera in March of 2025 and with Utah Opera in May. You can follow Matthew's work at matthewozawa.com, linked in the episode description in your listening app. And of course, if you haven't heard parts 1 through 4 of Sounds Current Angel Island, we invite you to scroll back and start with part 1, A Haunting History. And now here's my conversation with Matthew. So can you tell us what brought you to Angel Island, the actual island itself?
This piece.
It was this piece.
It really was this piece because I didn't know anything about it.
Wow.
And I felt if I'm directing a piece on Angel Island, I need to go to the island. And I, in particular, really wanted to see Immigration Station and see the writings on the walls. I have to say my experience on Angel Island was so mixed. It really was all these juxtaposition feelings and emotions, because those coming to the island, a lot of them were going there for nature hikes and all these beautiful things. And I did take a walk on the island to the very top.
Yep. And
it just was so gorgeous. And yet I kept thinking, what would it be like being stuck here? And the history of the island, not only, it's like it was a military base, then it was a quarantine station where they like fumigated people and everyone's belongings. And there are people that died from that who then just died on the island. And then Immigration Station, appeared. It has this kind of fraught history, and yet it's so beautiful. And then when you make your way to Immigration Station, I'm so glad that it is still there, because there's something about walking into the building that you feel the presence of those that have come before. And I think it is because of the weatheredness of it, but really because of the carvings in the wall. There's something about the energy of what it would have taken to carve these poems into those walls. Then for officers to say, hey, this is graffiti, we're gonna, putty over it and paint over it. And then for people to continue, like to go back in and sort of like carve into the walls these poems. And you see different forms of erasure. Some of the poems are clear, some of them are not as clear because of the officers having like erased these poems through putty and paint. And there's something about the energy of that, something about the nature of how many different communities and races and ethnicities were held in this building, right? The Chinese were predominant, but there's also some Japanese writing, there's Russian writing, there's, Tamil, there's so many languages in there. And you think about the hundreds of thousands of people that went through there, and you just kind of feel like their energy is still present. And that actually became an inspiration, not only a visual inspiration, but an emotional inspiration for what became the concept for my production. So I wanted to bring the idea of the ghosts, the ancestors, our heritage to life in a ritualistic space. And so I've actually framed the piece through the eyes of a contemporary young woman. She actually comes across these objects that she hasn't really seen before, a chair, these trunks, and in the trunks are objects of her great grandmothers. I guess I was recalling a little bit of my own history and connection to the place, but the fact that maybe this young woman had no idea that this history existed. And as she's opening the chest up, finding pictures, finding news clippings, newspaper clippings, finding a journal, finding things that start to become what we then dig into in the odd scenes, which are the historical scenes, the Page Act, the LA Massacre, but that this young woman finds these objects that actually become sources of information for her to learn from, as heard through her great-grandmother's voice. And as she's starting to open the journal and look at the pictures, this is when the ancestors start to appear and take her on this voyage, not only into different aspects of the Chinese American history and experience, and teach her about these moments, but also takes her on a journey of what she, as her great-grandmother, went through as a woman coming from China across the ocean to Angel Island, what that experience would have been like, and using those poems as a source of exploration of the experience. It is kind of an interesting, I guess, framing, because of course by the end, by the time you get to scene 8, she's gone through so much. And at that point, the community has kind of rallied behind her to say, despite all of the trauma, despite the exclusion, the prejudice, the racism, we as a community have to come together, that there has to be hope, that we can change the future, that we can ignite that change as individuals and as a community. And that really wanted to be a part of the narrative versus it only being all we do is experience trauma. Because of course, everything that's occurred during the pandemic with the rise of AA and HPI hate, the, Atlanta spa shootings, there's so many incidences where Asian Americans have continued to be, victim to prejudice and racism and exclusion. But how do we learn from the past to change the future? But I guess I just meandered.
No, it's great.
Thought-wise.
That's totally good.
Because it all stemmed from being in Immigration Station.
Wow.
Like standing there was when I saw it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, my own great-grandmother was in here. And in a weird way, I felt like they're all there. And I think about that a lot too, that our ancestors, our histories are in the fabric of everything around us. We think it's just a building. We think we're just kind of living our everyday life, but everything that exists happened because of someone else's labor or work or efforts. A building doesn't just magically appear. A ferry doesn't magically get built. Journeys don't magically happen. And so lived experiences and journeys exist in the fabric of every area, every city, every country, and we as humans are walking in spaces that other people have already walked in. And so there's something about bringing that into the staging of Angel Island here in New York that was really important.
Right. I mean, we were literally breathing the same air that they did.
Same air.
It's like the same molecules.
Exactly. And to even know that Angel Island will still be there after we all pass, and that we will be, this piece in particular and what we are doing, and the fact that you all have commissioned and ignited this piece and this narrative, this is now going to exist for all times, for so many generations, and people to experience, to think about, to learn about their history in a way that pre this piece probably people didn't even know about it. They weren't talking about it.
That's right.
And this is why we make art.
I'll have to say the experience for us performing the premiere in that barrack, talk about engaging with the spirits, right? It's just once we started to play, it's oh my God, it's they were just coming out of the walls, and they were, as I think in the Times article, it's they were smiling, and whereas before, every time I had gone to the island before that, it was just this dark, foreboding place.
Oppressive.
And now when I go there, it's I feel yeah, I'm comfy here.
Because you're telling their story.
Yeah. Sounds Current is a production of the Del Sol Quartet and the Del Sol Performing Arts Organization. Del Sol is Catherine Bates, Benjamin Creeth, Haeyoung So-yoon, and me, Charlton Lee. This podcast is produced and edited by Andrea Klunder at the Creative Imposter Studios. Technical direction by Edwin R. Ruiz. Additional production support from Alex Riegler. Cover art by Felicia Lee. Our theme music was composed by me, and performed by Delso Quartet. Angel Island was composed by Huang Ruo with generous funding from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, with additional funding from the Phyllis C. Wattis Foundation and the Clarence E. Heller Charitable Foundation. Special thanks to Andrea Fellows-Feinberg and Don Feinberg, who believe our stories are worth sharing. And thank you to all of our guests and collaborators in the ever-expanding world of Angel Island. You can find links to all of the resources and partners mentioned in this episode in the show notes in the episode description in your app and at delsoquartet.com/podcast. To learn more about Delso Quartet and the Angel Island Project, visit delsoquartet.com.